Hello again, and welcome to Football Manager Roleplay, a project where we create a player using the FM pregame editor, give him a potential ability of 200, and see if he will become the greatest American footballer ever. We will simply watch the progression of this player, Henry Marshall, from the age of 15 to hopefully his eventual retirement. This is a world building exercise where Football Manager provides the events, and we build a story around those events. Let's take a look at Henry Marshall's current slide. Now, there is no real change from the previous slide, but Henry now has his 15th appearance for Liverpool, receiving a nice salary boost. He is now on vacation from the club, and he is headed back to Shreveport, Louisiana. Usually there's a thing about plans here. There he is on vacation. Now, Henry back home in Shreveport looked forward to catching up with everybody, particularly his older sister Maggie, who had graduated with a degree in computer science from Duke University in 2027. He had missed her graduation, but at least he could give her a late present. However, he didn't plan on staying in Shreveport long, and while he was there, he was going to clear out his old bedroom, pack some things to send to Formby, and throw other things away. If his parents insisted he sleep there when he visited, he figured he could at least upgrade his old bedroom. He would certainly be looking for alternative accommodation. Then there was the spring break. The USA men's soccer team had Nations League and Gold Cup games, and he wanted to be invited to be part of those. Let's start moving the clock forward. 3. And before we move the clock too forward, let's look at the Liverpool End of Season Awards, Fans Player of the Year. Salah was 47%, the number one player of the year. Alexander-Arnold at 22%, and Ivan Fresneda at 19%. Goal of the season, Noah Okafor in that big 11-0 win over Crvena Zvezda Champions League game. Ivan Fresneda, he is the young player of the season. Any stats we need to worry about? Well, there they are. You can take a look at those. Henry Rice, not a part of any of those. And we're back, and I have a little bit of a cold, so my voice is going to sound a little bit different here. But let's take a look at the Liverpool retained list. We have Thiago. He has been set up for release. He will no longer be with the club anymore. And also Alex Ditchfield, a friend of Henry's from the youth reserves. He will get an extension, basically. But other than that, Henry went right back to Shreveport, Louisiana. And he wasn't home even a week before he received a request from his agent, Hunter Alvarez. Would Henry mind giving a speech in Shreveport to the Rotary Club? This wasn't the kind of call he usually got from Hunter Alvarez. His calls he got from his agent were all about salaries and negotiations. What had happened was the Rotary Club had reached out to Hunter Alvarez as they were interested in having a local sports person speaking to the club members. And Henry joked, what? They couldn't get Terry Bradshaw? And if you're not in the U.S., Terry Bradshaw is a famous American quarterback who also comes from Shreveport. So Henry is not the most famous athlete in his hometown. It took some effort to talk Henry into this. Alvarez told him he'd at least get a free meal out of it. These guys don't have a lot of money, at least not for speakers, Hunter said. But I was amused they reached out to me. And Shreveport has sent many athletes to professional sports, but no one in soccer. So you're the most famous soccer player from Shreveport. Besides, you'll want to start making connections with people. Henry didn't even have a suit. He didn't bring a suit with him. He had to purchase a suit. So he was already in the negative now, subtracting the cost of a good suit from the small gratuity he got. Furthermore, he didn't know what he was going to talk about. So his older sister Maggie helped him shape a speech, not that she was any better at it than he was. She helped provide some structure to his extemporaneous speaking, a few anecdotes, and, lessons learned to tell a crowd. He had a stack of index cards, the closing card, if he had to wrap up quickly. The Rotary Club was notorious for ending their meetings on time, and they'd cut him off if he didn't finish properly. So after listening to the beginning of the club business, Henry gave his first ever speech. It was a good experience. The crowd was attentive, although they were much older than he was. He would keep his index cards after the speech, and across the years, develop the speech further, building up 5, 10, 15, and even 30-minute versions of his speech. He did get an interesting question. He fell a bit short in his first speech. He hadn't learned how to pace himself yet. So the president of the club took questions. One older gentleman asked Henry if he'd played any other sports than football, and particularly did he play golf. Henry answered that his contract forbade him from playing dangerous sports like, say, skydiving or BMX motorbike racing, but not golf. I mean, his captain at Liverpool, Declan Rice, he played golf. You should play, the older man said. You could make a lot of connections. In later years, Henry would regret not learning that man's name. Well, anyway, we're going to be all over the place in this episode. With Henry, without Henry, looking all over the place. Let's go to Arsenal, of all places. Let's see if we can find the big news out of Arsenal. Yes, Mikel Arteta, as you can see here. Arsenal finished the season with the Premier League Championship. They won the League Cup. They took Arsenal to the Champions League final. They lost in a penalty stage to Dortmund. But Arteta could not please Arsenal's rabid fan base, who believed they should be winning the league every year, and he was sacked on May 31st. By this point, Arteta himself had had enough of Arsenal. And unlike most managers with the sack, Arteta was glad to go. Let's take a look at U.S. news. On May 27th, Henry Marshall knew he'd be part of the U.S. team in the Nations League semifinal against Mexico, held in Toronto. The U.S. would play at 3 p.m., and the Canada-Costa Rica game would follow at 7:30 p.m. The two semifinal games would be played on the same day. Henry would know on June 16th whether he'd be playing in the World Cup. And let's see if we can pull up that game. So our June 2nd game against Mexico resulted in a 3-1 loss to Mexico in Toronto. Basically, the U.S. did not perform defensively. And Henry Marshall, he started, but he had a 6.2 match rating. Not good. But he wasn't the worst man on the pitch for the U.S. Gabriel Solina over here in goal, he had a 5.8 match rating. Henry didn't feel that he really had much of a chance to practice with the U.S. team and not in a long time, and it showed. Now, there was still the third place game coming up, but Henry was disappointed in the loss, and he was worried about his Gold Cup chances. So 2 days later, Henry gets a call from Hunter Alvarez. And he gets some very, very, very surprising news from Hunter. Liverpool wanted to negotiate his contract. They wanted to shore him up, as Hunter put it. We have staff members signing deals, Schulberg with a new deal, Mitchell signs a new deal, and Henry Marshall, signs a 5-year Liverpool deal. He'd been, he basically went to $4.9 million a year, all the way up to 2032. And there's an increased bonus of $6.3 million a year as soon as he reaches 25 games. I'll go ahead and show you that in the contract section. There he is. Player bonuses, release clauses, appearance fee. Let's see, release clauses, player salary increases up to 6.357 if he can get 25 professional appearances. 1 year optional contract extension, and increased player bonuses. It was all good. All that waiting to get a salary boost, and then Liverpool comes around and gives him another one. So Henry very happy that he is loved by Liverpool. The supporters online were fairly supportive of Henry getting the extra money. But anyway, Henry goes on to June 6th. to the third place game against Costa Rica for the nation. And we can see that the USA have won in the North American Nations League's playoff 2-1 win after extra time against Costa Rica, the Rogers Center. Christian Pulisic, he scores the 105th minute, gives USA the bronze medal. Henry Marshall did not play in this game, and he is left wondering if he'll play in the World Cup. He'll know by June 16th. So after the Nations League Cup, it was back to Shreveport for Henry Marshall. Marshall was thinking about golf, and he thought that he might want to take up some golf, but he knew nothing about golf. So he devoted one day to a 4-hour crash course on golf taught by a local pro, set him back $240, and he bought a set of clubs at medium cost, just in case he got bored with it and needed to resell them. He made sure to take a little notebook with him to write things down. If he was selected for the Gold Cup, he didn't want to forget anything about golf while he was playing soccer. And he spent his time on the public links trying to master this new sport. In club news, Liverpool drops in the rankings from the best club in Europe to the 4th best club. PSG jumps from number 3 to number 1 to be ranked best in Europe. And Man City leaps ahead to become the highest ranked English club in Europe. USA head coach Brian Schmetzer selects the same squad for the Gold Cup as he selected for the Nations League semifinals, so this means Henry Marshall has made the team. Here are the Group D Gold Cup teams, and the US will host the Gold Cup, and the first game will be at the Cotton Bowl in Dallas on June 24th. Let's catch up with some of the technological and political events in 2027. Light-duty hydrogen fuel cell vehicles have now reached 1 million in annual sales. User-replaceable batteries are mandated in the EU. This is part of the right to repair, which basically states that a person who owns an electronic device should have the right to be able to repair that device. And if the battery goes down, you should be able to replace your own batteries. So you'll see computers, cell phones, etc. with user-replaceable batteries. In US politics, President Kamala Harris had difficulty getting her vice presidential selection, Senator Travis Jolly, into the vice presidency. Even though the Senate looked forward to having Jolly's seat vacated so a Republican could take over, Jolly barely passed the House with a vote of 214 in favor to 213 against, with 3 Republican House members abstaining. Without a vice president, House Speaker Joe Wilson would have been next in the line for the presidency, and he was previously a Republican Party whip. Speaker Wilson revoked the committee assignments of the members who abstained in the vote. On March 15th, Bougainville became the newest country in the world, the 196th nation on Earth, and the 5th new country of the 21st century. This new nation, formerly an autonomous part of Papua New Guinea, has a population of 250,000 people. Bernie Sanders died at the age of 85 on April 28, 2027. He had gone to the hospital the previous weekend in Vermont with symptoms of pneumonia, but began to decline rapidly. 2-dimensional barcodes become ubiquitous in retail as the 1-dimensional barcodes are being phased out. And China signed an economic agreement with the United States to liberalize trade and walk back some of its previously aggressive statements. However, China also increasingly begins blaming foreigners for its problems. Let's move to the first game of the Gold Cup for the USA against El Salvador at Dallas, Texas. The result of this game was a 1-1 tie on June 24th. And by the way, it was in blistering 95-degree heat in Texas. Down 1-0. I believe the name is Jesus Ferreira. He scores in the 61st minute. You hear my cat in the background to keep the U.S. team from being embarrassed. El Salvador is surprisingly strong in fighting in this game for possession. We can see Henry Marshall. He came on in the 73rd minute, and he only managed a 6.5 match rating for his lack of impact. And if we can see it down here, Yunus Musa, he had a horrible game, one of his worst games ever. That was a 5.9, but US still able to hold off to a 1-1 draw. Quinn Sullivan was player of the game here, but really the US has to do better than this if they're to avoid the same fate as their Nations Cup bid. Let's go back to the news feed, and we can see in Liverpool news a bid from the Wolves for Kilman. I always get that name. I always have a difficult time. Kilman Kelleher. They rejected a $20 million offer from Kelleher. The Kelleher definitely wants out of Liverpool. Still wants out, but he can't. They're still working on an offer for him. Now, Liverpool's 27-28 Premier League season will open up at the rivals. It will open up at Everton, as we can see here. And really, the Liverpool training camp has already started. I think only 2 players are not in it. Henry's one of them because he has his Gold Cup commitments. But Van Dijk here, he suffers a preseason setback. He will be out 3 weeks after twisting his ankle. Now, that was we talked about the US's first game. Let's take a look at their second game. This game is against the Dominican Republic in Group D, 1. And as we can see, we have a 3-0 win by the USA. This was in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl. The Dominicans had some moments here, but the USA really had something to prove after that 1-1 tie. The USA got right off to a lead with Malik Tillman scoring in the 5th minute, get things rolling. Just look at the possession numbers down here. USA had possession 70% of the game. Henry Marshall, he had a nice 7.0 match rating. There's Henry right there. And look at the player statistics. Marshall right here with 2 fouls given, 3 interceptions, and 1 clearance. Jordan Sabaccio, I hope I got that name pronounced right. He was the player of the game in this one. And the USA have 1 win and 1 draw, and they now need at least a tie against their next opponent, Nicaragua, to move on to the quarterfinals. We get to see some news here. We have, let me see if we can find it here. Yes, Zinedine Zidane, the former head coach of Liverpool, had a disastrous tenure there, but he is now back on his feet, and he has attended an interview for the Arsenal job. Can you imagine him as head coach of Arsenal? You know, it's entirely a possibility. On July 1st, before the U.S. game against Nicaragua at FedEx Field, we're going to bounce back to Henry's personal life here. Henry did get a call from his sister Maggie. A classmate contacted her and told her that there was a possible 3-month computer science internship in Boston with a U.S. government agency. And she had a friend of a friend who could help her get into the internship. And Maggie could share an apartment with one of the other internships, but Maggie was going to need some money to live in Boston for 3 months, and she wanted to know if Henry would loan her the money. And Henry said, "Don't worry about it. He will front her $10,000 to make it through the next 3 months." And frankly, he was quite glad to give her that money. So money keeps coming out the door here. Let's move on here. Zidane wants the Arsenal role. Liverpool is releasing Thiago. We don't see 3 people from the youth academies. They get their releases here. More speculation mounting over this Arsenal job. Julian Nagelsmann. Zidane's the only person who's declared himself, and Nagelsmann is supposedly going to be announced as Arsenal's head coach. This is according to 442. We'll find out later on. Nagelsmann is currently the head coach at Atletico at Spain. Now, let's go on to that Nicaragua Gold Cup Group D game, the game on July 2nd. And we can see that this is a 2-0 win. And this win actually leaves the U.S. in first place after the group play stage. Henry Marshall was an unused substitute for this game. It was Yunus Musa. He was the player of the game for the U.S., even though he didn't score either of the U.S.'s 2 goals. Nicaragua was just simply overwhelmed in this game. So let's look at the group stage final standings here for all groups. Canada and Honduras, Mexico and Costa Rica from Group B, Jamaica, Guadeloupe from Group C, US and El Salvador from Group D. And for the quarterfinal stage, Canada, Costa Rica, Honduras, Mexico, Jamaica, El Salvador, and Guadeloupe versus the United States. This USA-Guadeloupe game will take place July 5th at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. We had a lot of random stuff we covered in this episode. The USA struggles to third place in CONCACAF Nations League, but they've made it to the quarterfinals of the Gold Cup, and Henry Marshall has been a part of both competitions. Liverpool's training camp has already started, so will Henry Marshall come back to Liverpool victorious in the Gold Cup? We'll find out next time, and remember, if you like anything you've seen or heard, please hit the like or subscribe button. Until next time.